So we're already in decline or in stagnation. And we've got a bunch of presidential candidates, from Biden to Warren to Yang to Bernie Sanders to Trump, who are all trying to make the argument that they can, improve America, make America great again in some, in each one of their own versions. And the reason none of them really can, and none of them really has any chance, is because none of them understand what America is. None of them understand what made America great. Whatever greatness is still in America, and a lot is still in America. None of them understand what it is about America even today that is great. And if you don't understand what America is, if you don't understand what made America great, if you don't understand what made America an exceptional country among all the countries in all of human history, if you don't understand what made it possible for America to grow at GDP rates that are similar to China's, but at a time when nobody else had capital, when nobody else had knowledge, where we had to make it all up. We, not me, Americans of the 19th century had to make it all up. If you don't understand how that is possible, then you can't bring about greatness again. And from the programs of every single presidential candidate, you can see their utter ignorance of the idea of America, of the moral idea that at the heart of what America is. They all vary. All of these presidential candidates have different agendas. They vary. They're distinct. There's a difference between Trump and Biden and Elizabeth Warren and Yang and Sanders and so on. But they all share one thing in common. They all believe that the way to fix problems is to grow government. The way to fix problems is to have more programs that try to manipulate us and try to dictate us how we should live and what our life should be like. They all want to centrally plan our lives, our economy, who we trade with, who we employ, how much we pay them. They all, at various levels and various degrees and in various areas of our life, want to tell us how we should live. They want to place government at the center of everything. And the individual, nobody talks about the individual. The individual does not matter. And yet, what is America? What is America about? What is the source of American greatness? The source of American greatness is the individualism inherent in the founding documents of this country. The source of American greatness is the idea of individual rights, the idea of the freedom of the individual to pursue his own life, to pursue the rational values necessary for his own life. The idea of America is the freedom of the individual to choose his own path, to choose his own values, to choose his own ideas, and to act on those values free of coercion, free of authority, free of presidential candidates telling them what you can and cannot do, how you should and shouldn't live, who you can and cannot employ. And on it goes. How much of your money is not yours and should be taken away from you? That is the antithesis of what American greatness is. It is the antithesis of the idea of America. The Founding Fathers were very diligent about creating a system of government that made our politics to a large extent impotent in controlling the lives of the people. They wrote a clear, articulate constitution that tried to limit the scope of what the government could do in our lives, that tried to leave as much freedom as possible to the individual. The whole point of America was to reduce the power of the politician over our lives and to leave us free to pursue our happiness. The whole core of the American system, is the idea of the pursuit of happiness. The idea of the selfish, self-interested individual's inalienable right to use his mind, to choose his rational values in pursuit of his own happiness. And that the role of government was to protect that ability. It was to protect it from other people who might use force against them. It was to protect it from government itself, and that's why we have a separation of powers in government. It's why we have the division of powers. So that one branch of government cannot violate the individual's rights, another branch of government can overturn it, overrule. That's what this country was about, and that freedom, that inspired an energy, inspired an individualistic attitude among Americans in the late 18th century, only in 19th century, that inspired them to become entrepreneurs, to become pioneers, to build, to create, to make, and to create spiritually what is called today the American spirit. That spirit of, I can do it. I don't need anybody's help. I can stand on my own 2 feet. No challenge is too small for me. I can achieve my goals. I can achieve my happiness. I can achieve my wealth. I don't need people to take care of me. I'm an independent person. I will befriend those who I want to befriend, but I owe nobody anything just because they need it or just because they desire it. I am my own person. That American spirit built the richest, most successful country in human history from nothing. America was a third-rate colony in 1776, a colony the British barely fought over because it wasn't worth it. And yet, within 130 years, it was the mightiest economy and military power in the world. Not because of government policies, not because of central planning, not because of UBI, not because of industrial policy, not because of any of those things, but because of the spirit that the political system inspired, the spirit that freedom inspired, the spirit that brought millions and millions of poor, ignorant immigrants to these shores who then built a life for themselves, who invested in themselves. A spirit of Americans who created great industries. A spirit of Americans who pushed the boundaries of the frontier westwards to discover new lands, cultivate those lands, build new towns, build new cities, build railroads, and build the country, the greatest country in all of human history. And then slowly, over 150 years, intellectuals who resented this individualism, politicians who wanted and sought after more and more power, have slowly chipped away at the greatness of the soul that is America. And what are we left with today? A bunch of people rallying for Medicare for all because individuals can't take care of their own health individuals rallying behind some kind of UBI, $1,000 that somebody magically gives to you because people can't get a job and can't make enough money to feed themselves. Really? Really? A government that regulates and controls and licenses every single activity we engage in. Why? Because, oh, I don't know, something bad might happen. That's the American spirit? That's American greatness? No, that's the opposite. That's us becoming like everybody else. That's us like becoming like Europeans. Not Americans. There are very few Americans left. People who say, I don't want your UBI. I don't want your money. I don't want your guns at my head taking my wealth away. I don't want your health care. I can take care of my own health care. I can buy my own insurance, find my own doctor. And oh, I know, I got some of the criticism I got yesterday. Oh, he's a rich guy telling, I don't know, poor Americans how they should live. Yeah, I'm a relatively rich guy. I'm proud of that fact. I made all the money that I have. I started out with very little. Don't you want to be rich? Shouldn't you strive to be rich? And I didn't make this money because of anybody giving me a UBI or a handout. Why should you? And I'm not smarter than a lot of poor people. I don't pretend that what is possible for me is not possible for other people. Or what is right for me is not right for everybody else. This idea that somebody from one class, a supposed class, from one economic position can't talk about the truth is nutty. How will you ever advance? Just by listening to people who agree with you? The truths about the world don't care about whether you're poor, middle class, or rich. The truths about the world don't care about what skin color you have. They don't care about where you come from. If you have the right mindset, if you adopt the right spirit, the American spirit, the individualistic spirit, the spirit of the pursuit of happiness, then America is still a place where you can succeed. And what none of these candidates are doing is making the America even more a place that you can succeed. So they're all garbage. They're all horrible. They're all anti-American. They're all destructive. What we need is a rebirth of that Americanism. Those American ideas, whose representative in the 20th century is Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand's ideas, following the Founding Fathers, of what individualism really is, how to pursue it. And until we, the voters, we, the public, embrace the idea of individualism, embrace the idea of freedom, yeah, we're going to get these crappy politicians. And yes, I can analyze Bernie Sanders. I mean, he's a joke. He's absurd. He's ridiculous. He lies. The stuff he says makes no sense. It's completely illogical. Yang is a little bit more sophisticated, but at the end of the day, he doesn't know what he's talking about because he comes at it from a perverse perspective. And what he wants to do is be another CEO of this country. He wants to run my life and run your life. No, we should say, no, we should stay. What we need is a movement that says no to all these politicians. A movement that says we want our lives back. Keep your hands off my life. I remember that. You remember that placard during the Tea Party? People had "Keep your hands off my Medicare," which expressed the entire contradiction that was the Tea Party. What we want is a placard that says "Keep your hands off my life." What we need is a political movement to demand them getting their hands off our lives. Not coming up with new programs on 3,000 different things. Really, people, Yang 2020? Just another central planner? This is the best you can do? This is the best Silicon Valley can generate? Now, granted, compared to the, central planner in chief we have right now, almost anybody's better. But God, we should be able to do better than this. Better than any of these candidates. All they want to do is make America Europe. All of them. In different variations in Europe in different time frames. But none of them have a vision for what America is. None of them have an understanding for what American is. None of them are real advocates for this country, for what it stands for what it is possible to it, and for what its spirit really is. For what its spirit really is. Nobody. And unless we demand somebody like that, there will be nobody running. Somebody says nobody's running on that platform. That's right. But they play on for us. If all these people get excited about Andrew Yang micromanaging the economy, then you're going to get lots of people micromanaging the economy. Elizabeth Warren has a plan for everything, just like Andrew Yang does. Unless we start talking about the fact that what we need is how to dismantle the plans that already exist, dismantle the welfare state as it already exists, dismantle the tax code as it already exists, dismantle government as it is today. Until we start demanding that, we won't get it.
When you say that society has no responsibility here, I think individuals have a responsibility to themselves. Is that it?
I don't like the word responsibility involved here.
All right. Well, what should we say then? Help me. What do what I wish to do. Is that your point? That the more...
No. Do what I rationally think is right, according to the right morality. And help others if you can, but not as a primary obligation. And now, in regard to society, there is no such thing as society, you know. It's all of us. Now, how can we have obligations which we didn't undertake? See, the parents of a child would have obligations for him up to a certain age, since they brought him into the world, but they can't do what is impossible to them. So it doesn't mean that they can at any moment throw the burden on the rest of us. We're society, everybody's society, and we can't have unearned obligations and unchosen obligations.
What in the Ayn Rand civil context would be appropriate societal measures to accommodate the ungifted?
Their own parents, and a chance to give their parents to earn money. If, however, their parents are poor and cannot assume it, it's a big, heavy burden, then you can appeal to private charity, as it was always done before welfare statism in this country.
You want private charity as well for the gifted?
If necessary. They usually, in a free society, they won't need it. They'll make their own way, just so you don't stop them. But private charity cannot be done by means of tax collection, which means by force. Private charity is up to you. And if it's a worthy cause, that is, let's say, a subnormal child who certainly cannot help it, it's perfectly all right to help him, but not at the sacrifice of your own child.
You probably like to get rid of HEW then?
Oh, certainly. Oh, certainly. Much more than that. I'd like to get rid of.
A lot of the government, huh?
Everything except the basic duties of the government, which is police, law courts, armed forces.
You want less government. All right.
Thank you.
Well, everybody says that. It's a little hard to put that into effect when we've got a country that has such a maldistribution of wealth. You'll give me that, huh? Too few rich, too many poor.
I will give you part of that, because if there is a maldistribution, it's to those who have political pull. If some of your money is made with government help and government favoritism, then I grant you that is unfair and improper and unjust. But if you made it yourself in free competition, enough people want to pay you for your services or your product, then you should keep all of it. Why shouldn't you? You made it.
All right. Okay. You also think if the Middle Eastern countries want to hold us up for the oil at $5 a barrel, or a gallon, excuse me, $5. Will that day ever be back? They ought to be able to do it. It's their oil. Is that your point?
No. My point is we should not have permitted altruistically to all those nations to nationalize what we built for them. They took... Because we are now moving towards complete collectivism or socialism, a system under which everybody is enslaved to everybody. And we are moving that way only because of our altruist morality.
Yes, but you say everybody is enslaved to everybody, yet this came about democratically, and free people in a free country voted for this kind of government, wanted this kind of legislation. Do you object to the democratic process?
I object to the idea that people have the right to vote on everything. The traditional American system was a system based on the idea that majority will prevailed only in public or political affairs, and that it was limited by inalienable individual rights. Therefore, I do not believe that a majority can vote a man's life or property or freedom away from him. And therefore, I do not believe that if a majority votes on any issue, that this makes the issue right. It doesn't.
All right, then how do we arrive at action? How should we arrive at action?
By voluntary consent, voluntary cooperation of free men, unforced officials. The powers of government are strictly limited. They will have no right to initiate force or compulsion against any citizen except a criminal. Those who have initiated force will be punished by force, and that is the only proper function of government. What we would not permit is the government to initiate force against people who have hurt no one, who have not forced anyone. We would not give the government or the majority or any minority the right to take the life or the property of others. That was the original American system.
When you say take the property of others, I imagine that you're talking now about taxes.
Yes, I am.
And you believe that there should be no right by the government to tax. You believe that there should be no such thing as welfare legislation, unemployment compensation, regulation during times of stress, certain kinds of rent controls and things like that.
That's right. I'm opposed to all forms of control. I am for an absolute, laissez-faire, free, unregulated economy. Let me put it briefly. I'm for the separation of state and economics, just as we had separation of state and church, which led to peaceful coexistence among different religions after a period of religious wars. So the same applies to economics. If you separate the government from economics, if you do not regulate production and trade, you will have peaceful cooperation and harmony and justice among men.